And I had another question about the dark night of the soul. Is there such a thing? Because in the past few years after well, in the past few years, it just seemed like everything went completely wrong, and my thoughts were completely miserable about everything that was happening in my life, and it just everything stopped making any sense. So is that what they call the dark night of the soul?
Yes, at some point we have to accept that, as Jean-Claude used to say, there is no phenomenal way out. In other words, there is nothing in the world that can satisfy our desire for happiness and for completeness. So that when we understand that there is nothing in the world that we could, no matter how difficult it is to get, that could satisfy our desire for happiness. You know, we hit the bottom, so to speak, at that moment.
Yeah.
We have to go through a moment of absolute hopelessness.
Yes.
And then we can only bounce back, you see. But as we bounce back from this absolute hopelessness, we are bouncing back in a different direction. Before that, we were sinking lower and lower, deeper and deeper. Then we bounce back towards the light, towards the surface, towards the light. So that's my description of my experience of the dark night of the soul.
Well, yes, but once you realize that, then what do you do? Because all of the things that used to seem normal and all the things that seem to guide everyone around, or most people, are, they become pointless.
Yeah,
What
but
do you do?
remember that you know that there is happiness. Because you have experienced happiness in your life as a child. The problem was not that you didn't experience happiness, but that these experiences were very fleeting, impermanent, you see. And the more we seek to stabilize happiness in object, the more it seems to elude us. And that leads to the understanding that happiness is not really in anything we can acquire objectively, a relationship, health, whatever, wealth, fame, whatever people seek. Happiness through whatever object people seek as a dispenser of happiness doesn't work. And then we ask ourselves the question, but I have experienced happiness, so how did that happen? And we realize that these impermanent experiences of happiness took place when the desire suddenly stopped. Because when we acquire whatever we desired, all of a sudden we experience happiness. And most importantly, let's assume you didn't have the means to buy this fancy house, and you had this intense desire for it, but you didn't have the means. But all of a sudden a distant relative dies and leaves you the money which is sufficient to buy the house of your dreams. At that moment, of course you are sad about the death of the relative, but you are quite happy that now you can buy the house of your dreams. Your happiness is very intense at that moment because you know you can move in a month. After all the paperwork has been done, whatever. You're not moving right away. Okay, you buy the house, you move a month later, but when you move in, your happiness is not as intense as the one you experienced by hearing the news that now you had enough money to buy the house. Why is it important, that which I am telling you? It's because it is evidence that the happiness, the intense happiness you experience was not delivered by the object, by the house. Right?
It was more in the expectation.
It was just the ending of the expectation. In other words, the discovery of the desireless state, when you are not going anywhere. The desire stops, you are not going anywhere. So you are in the now. So the source of happiness is when you are not going anywhere. It's a desireless state. It's strange. So then, when we understand,
I get it up to the point. I get it up to a point. I mean, I've seen from my own experience that I've acquired a lot of the things that I was dreaming about, and when I got them, I was like, well, whatever. No, it didn't make me happy. So I mean, I understand that whatever I desire is not going to make me happy, but you know, and it just remains there in that void, basically.
no, what I'm saying is this, is simply that the happiness, that we discover that the happiness is not in seeking more objects. I'm not saying don't use objects if they present themselves, if you have the means to acquire them. I'm not saying don't buy a nice house if you have the money for, but that's a different story. But happiness itself is not in the house, is not in an object. That's the important understanding. It has to be found somewhere else. What happens when the desire comes to an end? That's the happiness. And then we have to investigate what is the engine of desire. Because if we want to stop the desire, right? Because we understand that happiness is in the desireless state. We have to understand the engine of the desire. And most of the desire, the engine is the belief to be a separate person, who needs to be recognized, who needs to be loved, who needs to...
Yes.
Who is not going to survive if she's not loved, because then she's going to be left alone in the cold to die, a miserable death or something like that, right? So all these fears and all of these desires project us constantly into the future, prevent us from experiencing the now, the desireless state, when we are not going anywhere. And the peace. So think about it. It's a very different perspective. Because most people believe otherwise. Your parents, our parents, believed otherwise. And they were giving us recipes for happiness. But obviously it didn't work for them. So why should they work for us, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Society, our teachers in school, society, in the newspapers, they give us also recipes about what to do, what not to do. I look at these journalists and media people, are they really happy? They just want more money, write more books, become more famous and more empty.
Yes. I mean, I see that, but there doesn't, once I realize it, I just feel this void inside, and I don't have the things that used to guide me before, but there isn't anything else to guide me through life, basically.
But
Well, maybe it is, I don't.
ultimately, you have to guide yourself, right? Nobody can
Yes.
do the journey for you. They can give
Yeah.
you, they can tell you where the source is, give you a map how to go there, but you ultimately have to go there and drink on your own. So the drinking at the source is the understanding of what I said, that the happiness, what we seek, cannot be found in an object, in an event. But look, since we have already experienced happiness, right? Albeit fleetingly, and if it is not to be found in the phenomenal side of our human experience, phenomenal side means whatever we experience as a thought, as a feeling, as a sense perception, if it cannot be found phenomenally, then there is only one possibility which is left, that it is found in the other element of our human experience, which is the awareness itself. Because our human experience is comprised of 4 elements. 3 elements that are phenomenal: what we think, what we feel in the body, what we perceive in the world through the senses, sounds, images, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, etc. And then the awareness, which is aware of these 3 categories, phenomenal categories. There is nothing else than these 4 elements in our human experience. The awareness and whatever the awareness perceives. The awareness is a common background of all perceptions, and what we perceive is coming and going, always in movement. If that which we seek, the happiness we seek, cannot be found in that which comes and goes, in that which moves, that which appears and disappears, there is only one possibility left, which is that which doesn't change, that which doesn't move, our reality as awareness. That's the only possibility which is left. And the good news is that happiness exists because we have experienced it. Even if it was intermittent, very just a flash here, a flash there. Then if we use our reason, our intelligence, on the one hand it exists, on the other hand it cannot be found in what we see, hear, touch, think, or feel, then it must be found in the other direction, awareness.
Yes. Most of the time when I just sit as awareness, it feels like a blank.
Because you cannot see awareness through the mind as an object. Because you can have a representation of awareness. The word awareness already is a representation. But any representation will be in terms of the senses, will be an image, like a mirror, or a white wall, or black wall, or whatever. Something, but it is still going to be an object. It is never going to be that which perceives the object, because that which perceives the object cannot be defined along mind lines.
Yes. So maybe I'm trying to get to that state somehow through the mind, or I'm trying to grasp at
So,
it. Or...
yes, the mind has to abdicate, has to, at some point, to say, understand. The understanding should be there. The mind doesn't understand anything, but the understanding should be there that the mind is not a good vehicle to take us there. That's the bad news. The good news is that we don't need a vehicle because we are already that.